What did we talk about the last 3 weeks? Emotion what?
Mastery.
Emotional mastery, right? And emotional intelligence. We went through 3 straight weeks of stuff. We broke into all kinds of pieces. Key part there is for you guys, number one, to start being aware of what?
Trigger.
Emotions, triggers, things that happen, right? And then I want us to do what? What was the main takeaway? Pause, right? What's the second part?
Label the emotion.
And then choose the emotion, right? I want to choose the emotion that serves the outcome I desire. And most people are in autopilot and they're just constantly doing what? Reacting to life instead of responding to life strategically, getting what they want. Which is why in many cases they don't get what they want because they're just going along like a ping pong ball or like a machine, getting knocked around by life. Feel like they're the victim because they're reacting to everything instead of choosing their response tactically and picking the right emotion that serves what they want. First news broke down deeply with you guys. We're going to talk about after we get to the part of awareness and we start to understand, I can observe and then choose the emotion I want. How do we get you guys to get to a place where it's consistent? Today, I'll talk with you guys really about rewriting the inner dialogue. What does that mean, you think?
Rewiring your brain.
Yeah, in a way. What specifically though? The what? Some kind of keep going deeper. We're talking about self-talk. So my inner dialogue, right, is what I say to myself, both consciously and subconsciously. So we have two types of self-talk. One's subconscious, one's conscious. Self-talk is the internal dialogue or ongoing stream of thoughts that takes place within your mind. It can be conscious or subconscious. It reflects your beliefs, attitudes, perceptions about yourself and the world around you. Self-talk often serves as a running commentary of your experiences, decisions, and emotions. What's the key word there? Running commentary. So what does that mean? It narrates to you what the movie is. So based on your self-talk, it helps you understand consciously the movie's good or the movie's bad. Does it make sense? And so what most of us have is a negative programming that's running in the background. That's a negative self-talk. That's narrating how you see things. So if the negative self-talk is driving the narration, my conscious mind is hearing it, thinking what?
It's how you perceive
Your perception.
reality. Yeah.
It creates a perception of reality. And so, great example of this, right? You ever had like two brothers or sisters? They grew up in the same household, maybe even two twins. And then later on, you ask them about their life coming up. They have two different stories about how they came up. One that was really tough, one that wasn't too tough. Their parents loved them. Right? Dad was an alcoholic and went to prison. He was abusive. One brother, guess what happened to him?
Very successful.
Successful attorney, one of the top attorneys in the country. He was successful. They said, what made you so successful? And guess what he said? My dad was an abusive alcoholic and went to prison. Second brother, who is his brother, guess where he's at?
In prison.
Guess what he was? Abusive alcoholic in prison. They asked him, what happened? How'd you end up in prison? Guess what he said?
My father was
He
abusive.
blamed his dad for being abusive. And so what's the difference there? Perspective and really the narrative that drives the reality. And so I want you guys to understand it's not just the words, the sentence, it's the narrative behind the sentence that drives your reality. And so what you see and how you see it is based on the narrative your subconscious is running based on what you have. Make sense? And so it's important. Our mind is programmed for survival techniques to see negative. And so this is a great example. What do you see? So our mind tends to focus on what? The dot. And so let's say this is your life and all this is the positive in your life that you have going on. All the great things you have going on in your life. What do we see? We're trained as humans for survival reasons to see the negative. The problem with that is it makes us focus on the negative more than focus on the positive. And so we have to be good at retraining our brain. Your narrative that you say is what your perspective is. And so I gave the example to brothers. Why is it important that your inner self-talk determines your emotional state? That's the key part. So my inner self-talk, the narrative, it determines overall your emotional state. And when things go sideways, and that's how you're able to bounce back, which is what this whole course has been about. But the reality is when you're tired, you have a different story about your spouse. When you're burned out, you have a different story about work. And so your emotional state is so important because it dictates the dialogue and how you perceive things. And so there's three main things that make up your emotional state. Number one's focus. What do you think that means? Number one, focus.
Where focus goes, your energy flows.
Yes, so where our focus goes, it basically has to do with your reticular activator. Everybody know what that is? Your RAS? Call it RAS. And what does that mean?
That means you're focused on for instance, if you just bought a certain car
Yeah.
and you see that car, you never really noticed that car before. Now that I bought that car, everywhere I go, I see that car.
Yeah. Right? Pregnant women knows other pregnant women, right? I buy a certain car, escalates. And so if you break down why the RAS system is there, it's there for us because your subconscious sees so much data And so many things, the RAS allows you to focus on what's most important, or what it believes is important. Does that make sense? And so the RAS makes you see things that it thinks important based on what your conscious is showing you. Does that make sense? If you ever bought a watch, I bought my first Bradley, bought this one. I never really seen it before. And all of a sudden I saw 3 or 4 people that had it. Here, ended up having one. You don't notice it until what?
Looking for
So
it.
you sees it. Even though I may not consciously look for it, my RAS picks it up, which is important. Now on the flip side, there's this thing called scotoma, which we talked about before a couple weeks ago. That's a blind spot. And your brain tends to filter that out because it doesn't see that as important. And so you're so overwhelmed with all this data and things that you see that your conscious mind is being told. So what you focus on is how you feel, which is very important. So if you have negative self-talk, and my RAS, which is reticular activating system, is saying what's important, all the negative around you. It drives your whatever type of self-talk you have is telling your subconscious disempowering. So if I have negative self-talk, RAS notice. Negative stuff. Where do we get most of our self-talk from? Your parents. How you're brought up, how things all went for you, your coaches, people you grew up with, friends. They drive your subconscious. There's this really freaking smart guy at Warrior last week. He said basically there's these different types of brain waves that you have. I think it's the most high level you can be. It's where Einstein basically hacked himself away so he could get 1,800 patents. State and he would fall asleep in a chair. And the ground would wake him up and he was in theta state. It would be in theta state 20 minutes a day. Your brain saying you get all these great ideas. And so he found a way to do that, which is where all his great ideas came. As a child, you're 1 to you're 7, your brain's constantly in theta. Meaning it takes on everything. That's why I say fuck one time, all of a sudden, guess what your kid says? Fuck 1 through 7. The problem is they don't have the front part of their brain. The front part of their brain can't sort what's good and what's not good. Develop yet. That's why they can't make good decisions about things yet. They can take it in, which means their subconscious records everything, which is why the self-talk's driven really in the early ages. They can't filter out anything, so everything they say, everything they hear is actually recorded in the subconscious forever. And so this is what drives you to go back and look at where your self-talk comes from in many cases. And we all have that. And I can have a great childhood and get beat up in business for 15 years. Guess what happened to self-talk? It can go down a little bit because you had something actually happen to you. And so it's important to understand that, okay, I gotta control this. What you focus on enough then becomes more important to the brain. Then I see more of it. Number 2, our body. What does that mean? Tony Robbins is huge on this. Your emotional state.
Yeah, if you don't feel good, you're not going to.
So it's all about changing your state. Anybody been to a Tony Robbins conference before? What do you do?
My goodness, you're the whole day.
Doing what?
You're jumping.
Jumping up and down, high-fiving.
Energy. You almost feel like you're in a meat factory. It's super cold.
Cold, but you're jumping around, doing everything to change your emotional state.
Your state.
So that you can retain what he's talking about. What happens is you raise your emotional state through your body. So this is a great example that one of the guys teaching us that, look, you can go to a conference and watch somebody's body structure and watch their body language and tell if they're successful or not. You can tell the speakers who are going to speak based on how they show up and how their body looks. They're slunched over, they have a good body posture, they have a good emotional state. You can read that energy instantly. The number 1 drug in the world to feel good, go work out. You don't want to go work out and feel shit, but if you do a physical workout, it can be cardio or it happens afterwards. Increases emotional state. It's literally a physical thing that releases chemicals in your brain, endorphins that release to make your body and your emotional state higher. And so it's constantly, I'll make sure I'm doing. And so if this is one thing we had in Warriors, they call it making moves. They just have you jump down and do 15, 20 push-ups all of a sudden, or air squats, or whatever it is, to increase the emotional state, which allows you to be much more dialed in. And then at that point, you see things better. Does that make sense? And so the key part is these are 3 main things. Now, what do you think the third thing is? Emotional state drives feelings. What else? What drives your emotional state? Self-talk. Self-talk. That's what we're teaching today. It's 33% of your entire emotional well-being. Think about that. It's 1/3 of the entire total of your emotional state. And so I have to understand this is so important because it's 1/3 of your emotional state. So I know if my emotional state's good, I see things better, and obviously I feel better, I react better, I make better choices, and I know this is 1/3 of it. What do I need to work on? Self-talk. This is myself included, consistently, right? I'm pretty good about this, and this is why it's important to do this every morning, right? I do my stack. A lot of times, my self-talk's probably not great. I'm thinking shit's fucked up. It's not good, it's bad, right? And I go back and reframe that to what? More empowering story, right? And I'll teach you guys a couple of pieces of that in a minute, but here's the key part. Self-talk is 1/3 of my emotional state. I know my emotional state's good, I make better decisions, right? I react better. Best examples with your spouse, with work, how things work. And so I gotta constantly make sure I'm aware of this focus on good things, focus on positive, make sure I'm understanding what's going on, that my RAS is seeing things positive. My body's in a place where I'm increasing my emotional state. If I'm not, I go take a walk, do something to change physically so I can release those chemicals in the brain that allow my emotional state to go higher. Why?
So you're more successful.
I want to make better choices, make better decisions, and obviously take more action, right? It's very important. And so that's the key part there with it. So I know it's 1/3 of my emotional state based on what you say to yourself, both consciously and subconsciously. Now, with that, there's 2 types of self-talk. What do you think they are? Positive,
Negative.
which is called empowering. There's negative, which is called disempowering. And this shit's easy to talk about and do when things are good, right? The question is, what's your self-talk when things go right? When it's difficult, when your someone's yelling at you, when the deal falls through, when the lead doesn't close, the fire screws you over. That's when the things matter the most, right? Why does it shape your emotional state? Positive self-talk is encouraging, empowering, solution-focused thoughts. Example, I can handle this challenge, I've done this before. Negative self-talk is critical, it's discouraging, it's fear-driven thoughts that undermine confidence or motivation. Example, I'm going to mess this up, they're not going to close me, they're going to be mean to me. So positive self-talk is encouraging, empowering, solution-focused. Negative, on the other hand, critical, discouraging, or fear-driven. And so his self-talk drives your willingness to take risks, embrace change, persevere through adversity. Positive self-talk encourages proactive behavior, while negative talk often leads to avoidance or inaction. So if I've known I should do something for a long time, and I'm not doing it, what's the first place to investigate? My self-talk. What's my belief and what's my words around it that keep me from doing it? Because I know if I believed in it, and I believed that it would work and that I could do it, I would have done it. And so if you catch yourself in avoidance, the first place is your self-talk. I'm going to get yelled at, I want to bother these people, I don't want to be a salesperson. If you have some type of story, negative self-talk, that is keeping you in avoidance. Make sense? Here's the crazy part. It actually has an impact on physical and mental health. So constructive self-talk reduces stress, lowers cortisol levels, improves resilience against mental health challenges like anxiety and depression. Negative self-talk increases stress, burnout, and emotional exhaustion, and it literally releases a chemical called what?
Endorphin.
Cortisol. Which is opposite. Cortisol is called what? Stress hormone, right? And so fight or flight. And so as we have more stress, your body releases more cortisol, which is called the fight or flight. What do most people tend to do? They just fly it and flee out, right? They go for the flight option, which is avoidance. Really quick example. Think of somebody in your life you love spending time around the most. Perfect.
He's always been there for me. Like every time I call him, he's there. And anytime I need advice, he always gives it to me.
Gives you advice, right?
Yeah.
What's good advice look like?
Good advice would be being overreacting, which I stress the fuck out for no fucking reason.
So when you call them and you're stressed out, what does he usually do?
We just sit there and talk about the issue, and then we talk about a solution. Is there anything you can do to control it?
Good questions,
Yeah.
right? They tend to ask you good questions,
Yeah.
which tend to not emotional questions, right?
Sometimes you give me some shitty advice. I feel like my tenant sometimes goes off if it's shitty advice. You know, he does it a little bit differently with his sales, but for me, it's more like a release point.
Yeah, but when you go through them, what's the one thing you notice in him with you?
He's always confident when he gives me the advice. He gives me the energy.
He gives you belief, right? So when you call him, is he like, man, you're gonna be totally fucked in this scenario? Or is he like, dude, it's not that big a deal, you're probably gonna be okay?
He wouldn't say that you're totally fucked because he wants me to protect that mindset. So he normally says something positive.
Yeah, most people do, right? In
And
that scenario.
it's normally the belief thing that just helps me push through.
You wanna call dad, talk to dad, and dad tell you everything's gonna be okay, right? But what do we tend to do to ourselves? The exact opposite, right? Man, this shit's fucking terrible. So if you look at this, the person that, and you guys probably have somebody similar you thought of, is that the person you look through the most, look for the most, and feel the most confident in is your dad. And the one thing you're looking for the most with your dad is what? You said the word.
Tell me that's okay.
Which is the word what? Belief. Which is empowering what?
Positive thoughts.
Self-talk. So you think about it, you seek it from your father because we want that empowering self-talk overall. Now on the flip side, right, who's the person that we spend the most time with of anything?
Yourself.
The person we can't escape, which is ourselves. How do we talk to ourselves?
Negative.
This is terrible. So what happens is we don't notice as much. They're gonna make it. Then all of a sudden, what we look at our own self-talk, we don't realize how bad it is until we contrast it with somebody we look up to who has what? Positive self-talk and belief. But ultimately what we're looking for is what? Positive self-talk, which drives you to the outcome focus, which is the things you can control, which gets you to where you want to be. And most time that you're down when you do call dad, it's not as bad as you think it is. What's hurting the most? The negative self-talk that's disempowering us, which is why we're having to go somewhere else. Which is powerful for us to look at, right? Look back, do they believe in you? The person, yes, most of them, right? And so the person we hang out with the most that we cannot escape is ourselves. And so the problem is we have to be around us all the time. And so people tend to do one or two things. Number one, they numb themselves instead of learning how to talk better to themselves. And so instead of learning how to have better self-talk, people just numb themselves. What does that mean? They go right to avoidance. Comfort's avoidance, right? I go right to avoidance because I don't want to improve my self-talk and be aware of my self-talk, which is important. So most time you're feeling burned out is when you're not in alignment with you. Your self-talk is not being developed in a positive way, and you're not driving that through what? Growth. Does that make sense? So belief, positivity, learning a skill set allows me to have more belief in what it is in that scenario. And so here's the deal, right? You want to speak to yourself like you speak to someone else you care about. And if I ask you, do you believe in you? What would that self-talk look like? But here's the crazy thing. Negative self-talk is like surrounding yourself with people that you don't want to be like. So if I surround myself with people I don't want to be like, does that increase or decrease stress? I look back, most of my stress is what?
Negative self-talk.
Self-talk. I catch myself when I study this stuff so I can get better at it. I stack in the morning, but here's the thing. It's okay to feel that way. I just want to be able to change it and shift it to a more process in terms of what I do.
I found myself doing that this morning.
Negative self-talk makes it better or worse?
Worse.
Does it empower you or disempower you?
Disempowered.
Disempowers you. You feel more exhausted or less exhausted when you tell yourself negative stuff. And here's the thing. I want you guys to write this down. Whatever you say to yourself with enough emotional intensity, you become. Now, what does that mean?
It has to do with your belief system.
This is why it's much easier to become negative very quickly. Negative is a lot more charged than positive. So as some bad things happen, does it make me angry? I get angry, all of a sudden what happens? My negativity becomes charged, and so the more energy, the more emotional intensity behind that, the more it's anchored in my mind and my conscious, subconscious. So it's important. It reinforces a belief or identity. And so my inner dialogue reinforces the way you see yourself and your potential. And so repeated thoughts, positive or negative, they solidify into beliefs, influencing how you approach life, interact with others. The more intensity, along with the charge, obviously increases belief. And so if I'm not aware of this, if I'm not consciously being positive about it, what tends to happen? We're wired to focus on negativity. This is where humans get fucked up because they scream their losses, and they wish for their wins. Why? Because they're programmed that way. Don't be too flashy. Other people who are achieving things, who are average, don't want you to celebrate that either because it makes them feel what? Uncomfortable. So here's the thing. I give you guys a black dot example. Negative self-talk has more intensity and emotion than the positive, which is why it gets worse. Victims just justify things over and over. Key part here, successful people create beliefs that move them forward and say them over and over. Anybody ever met anybody super successful that had thin skin? Anybody met somebody super successful who didn't believe themselves? I'm going to write this down. This kind of way to look at it too. This is a good example to break it down. So you have here potential. How much potential do you think someone has?
Unlimited.
Unlimited, right? So everybody agree that someone has unlimited potential. Most people's lives don't have those results. Belief.
Self-talk.
Self-talk, along with that, their belief that they think it's possible. What stops them? Belief a lot of times is why they don't take action. When I take little action, what do I get? Little results. I take massive action, what do I get? Massive. What happens is, based on the amount of action I get, results, why don't they take action? It comes down to what? Their story.
Self-talk.
So the story driving it. So here's the thing, if I believed I could do it, I would do what? Do it. But the story I tell myself is say what? It's not possible, I can't do it. Jeremy can do it, I can't do it. Or whoever else can do it, I can't do it. So we have to look back and say, hey, what's the self-talk that's holding me back from taking action? And how do I get that corrected? Because we all agree everybody has unlimited potential, but the problem is very few actually take the action. And part of that is just getting uncomfortable with how we're programmed and get through that call reluctance or discipline reluctance, whatever it is in that scenario. But here's the deal. If you have a negative story, here, you take more action, less action. If I have positives, I take more action, less action. More. Very simple in that. And so, what stories are you telling yourself that's holding you back? There's a key to Pandora's box in there for you. There's a key. Help you unlock what? That next level of action internally in terms of day-to-day activities. So obviously this is the action part. But then the results, good or bad, anchor themselves into a cycle, and that part here is another story. Make sense, you guys? Or no? So what stories are you telling yourself that are holding you back? That's the key part there. And so here's the deal. For me to change it, what I have to do? I have to change my mindset. I change over to just whole part. I've taught this before too. Remember I taught this like a couple months ago. Neuroplasticity?
Yeah.
What's that mean? Rewire your brain. So neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to adapt and rewire itself in response to experiences and you're walking on. So your mind has all these trails for the last 10, 20, 30 years. And that's created trails in your mind. And so the problem is a lot of those trails don't serve you. They're negative. People tend to take the trail. Why? It's easier just to walk on the trail because it's already been walked through that path. And so for me to change that, I have to create a new trail. I got to go in my brain and create more of a positive trail. Is it easy the first time? No. So if I'm hiking in the woods, I go through the woods, I'm creating this new trail. The first time I go through the trail, what happens? It sucks. I may get lost. I'm going through the trail. I'm cutting all the bushes. It sucks. I'm cutting everything down. But the second day I go back through the trail, what happens? Easier. Third day I go through the trail, what happens? Much easier. Fourth, I go through that same trail for a week. Now, so what I have?
You know the trail.
I have the trail. It's cutting and smooth. And so that's how neuroplasticity works in our mind and positivity. We have to make sure we train that, but it's not going to happen the first day, second day. You got to constantly be doing it. On the flip side, if I have a trail in the woods that's a shitty trail, and people stop walking it, what happens to the trail?
It grows.
It goes away. Right? And so that's how you guys look at this neuroplasticity, and where I can create new my brain's going to take repetitions over and over and over to create the new positive trail, and we'll let the old trails tend to close up. They're going to be there for a little bit, but eventually I do it right, what happens? They start to fade away. And so that's the key part I want you guys to take away with this, which I think is super powerful to look at. Once I've walked that path, it's easier to go down again, which you just want to build it in a positive way and control it in what you want to do and how you do it. And so you walk it today, it's going to be hard. You walk it tomorrow, it's going to be hard. The next day, but after a week, what happens? It gets more defined and gets better. Repetition is the mother of skill, right? It rewires the brain, which is super important. So what I want to do is rewire the RAS system, reticular activator system, right? Enough focus on the positivity and the story allow me to rewire the RAS so that now I see. And so that allows me to be more empowered, increases my emotional state, which allows me to take more positive action. And if you guys just do this from work and you go home better at night and your emotional state's better, it's going to make your relationship 10 times better. If I got to go back home to two crazy kids and a wife who's been cooped up with them all day that doesn't want to deal with them or me at that point, terrible experience, right? My kids come in, hug you, love you, your spouse, things are much better, but they're all driven based on my emotional state. Where one, his kids were like, boy, you go home and they all tighten down, shut the laptops and close the things because dad would come in grumpy and triggered and angry from work. The guy broke down in tears when he started sharing that publicly. What do you think Gary said? You created it. That environment is 100% defined by you. Your kids don't just get defensive and tighten up and be on defense when dad walks in on their own. That's not a natural thing. That's something that dad brings based on his emotional state. You want to fix that? What do you got to fix? Your emotional state. And you come in daily with a positive emotional state and something that's very empowering to yourself, your children, and your wife. What happens to them? Their emotional state is changed. They're able to focus on the positive things about you, the energy you bring to them. And so what he talks about is you drive the energy at your house. All of it. As the leader in that scenario, right? And the same thing with whoever else is going on, you're going to be able to empower that and drive that, but it's important. It's all driven by us, not by them. But in his mind before that, what would he think? He's stressed out, he's doing all this stuff, he has all these stories about him working hard and they should do this or do that, and he goes home, and what happens is he's destroying the energy by his emotional state being down. Make sense? And so it's powerful for us to look at. Well, then here's what I want you guys to write down to this, right? Doesn't matter if the market's good, the market's bad, it's just the market. And so these come down to stories. So if people are saying constantly the market's bad, is that empowering or disempowering? Disempowering. But hey, look, the market's the market. I'm going to make my adjustment based on the market. And here's a great story. I can change that. I want to succeed in things that are difficult for others. Because if I succeed in things that are difficult for others, when it does come back, what happens to me? Better. I get much more, right? And so when you don't have what you want, action or lack thereof. And so I mentioned earlier, make 20 connects a day. And so I want to make sure I'm able to understand that from that standpoint. And so third thing we talk about, stress response and cortisol, right? Cortisol is driven, right? Negative self-talk activates the brain's amygdala, right? For processing threats, triggering release of cortisol, the stress hormone. When we talk about that, that's fight or flight. Positive self-talk engages the prefrontal cortex, which regulates and calms the stress response. This shift reduces cortisol levels, promotes feeling of calm and control. All driven by self-talk. Very important. So the secret to control the front part of your brain. Doing it over and over again. Through repetition. And so that's the key part. How do I do that? I need affirmations and how I do that. There's a couple ways I'll show you guys to do that. But the problem is the self-talk has impact on performance. Positive self-talk enhances focus, motivation, problem-solving abilities. Athletes and high performers often use affirmations to achieve peak states. Negative self-talks creates a self-fulfilling prophecy. So I play field goal. If I talk about in my head, I'm going to miss this field goal the whole time. Miss a damn field goal every single time. But if I know I've done the work and practice over and over and over, I'm gonna nail this thing like it's nothing, what happens? Most of the time, I hit field goal.
Makes it easy.
Much easier for sure. So it's the same thing with business, and so that's the key part. Language, mirror neurons, and emotional is basically language, the power of the brain. Words that are spoken loud or internally affect your brain chemistry. Positive words release dopamine and serotonin, promoting a sense of well-being. The negative ones, self-talk mimics how you'd encourage a friend, activates the same exact neural networks receiving external encouragement. So, like Ryan was seeking that belief from his father, you can do the same thing with yourself. How do we do that? First thing, number one is awareness. We talked about that. We're going to get awareness. I'll give you guys a couple questions to be done with this. You got to be aware of it. So, write down your thoughts. Keep it in a journal. We talked about that. Number one, a journal. Or stack. I will show you guys how to stack. I just got to build out in ChatGPT you guys can use. There is also stacks in 360. You guys can do it right through Google Docs there. It takes you to the question process, which is important. Write down your thoughts during challenging moments when you feel stressed. Identify recurring themes. Number two, check your emotions. Use your feelings as a cue. When you start feeling anxious or down, pause and ask yourself, this is important. I caught myself recently doing this. You ask yourself, what am I saying right now? Most of the time, what's going to be?
The negative part.
Yeah, oh man, this shit's all fucked up. Things aren't working. I catch myself in this past couple days. Some crazy stuff happened. All of a sudden, I started thinking everything's bad. All the way to like, I was getting ice out of the refrigerator last night after work, and the ice falls out of the refrigerator. What do I think? Everything's bad. What the fuck? But the reality is that's just a self-talk, and it's so much easier to be anchored in by emotion, which makes it double down. You have to be willing to do what? Break the pattern. Thankfully, the ice fell. I caught myself and broke the pattern. I had a great evening with my kids. It's just something you got to make sure you're able to do there. Check your emotions. Use them as a key. Observe without judgment. It's important. I want to observe without judgment. I want to avoid as good or bad. My self-talk, good or bad. I want you guys to approach it with curiosity and willingness. Does it serve or not serve me? So the self-talk I have, is it serving or not serving me? It's very important to look at with that. I'm going to be curious about the emotions. If I'm feeling a certain way, ask what's bringing it on. But here's the thing, I'll give you guys a couple questions. It's kind of similar to the stack, very similar to what we do in the stack overall. Number one, is this thought based on fact or assumption? Thought based on fact or assumption? What's an example of that?
Is it like actually in front of you, or is
Yeah.
it like basically like assume?
Is it actually true? That's the first part we talk about with the stack. What's the story you're telling is actually true? Most people tend to lie to themselves and tell them that's true when it's not really true. Is it true? And there's a difference between truth and fact. Truth is belief, fact is what's actually true. And so as a leader, two people have issues, what I try to look for. The fact, because the truth is truth, but there's always something in the fact that's middle, which is very important. So number two, what evidence contradicts this thought? What evidence contradicts this thought? What's an example of that? Man, it's tough, no listings are selling. Okay.
Jeremy's.
Is there any listings that are selling? Yeah, there's a lot of big ones selling. So that means that thought is what?
False.
False. Right? Recruiting's hard. Somebody's getting them, they're doing something, right? The reality is, and then you gotta do what? It helps empower you because now I can go to a solution focus instead of feeling I'm stuck based on circumstance. This is why it's so powerful. These two can change your life. Just these two questions. Is it based on assumption or fact? And is there anything that contradicts that story? In other words, the opposite, is it possible the opposite is true? I'm actively seeking out reasons why this negative belief might not be true. Third, what would I say to a friend that had this thought? This is powerful. Who wants to give me an example of something you guys have been through? Negative self-talk you had recently.
I had fall apart. Nothing I could do. I was trying to tell myself, it sucked. I was like, what the fuck? What could I have done?
There's something you could have done differently, right? It could be a pre-frame. The story could be like, man, these deals keep falling apart, or I suck. And so, okay, is there anything contradicts? Well, you don't suck, you got a bunch in the contract, you're doing something right. People are trusting you, liking you. And so now it's, okay, What would I say to a friend that? Well, the reality is there's something you might be missing very small in a pre-frame. The good news is you get a lot of people under contract, and the deals will be easy to hold together if you can just figure what that piece of it is, right? It's more empowering. Now I gotta figure out what's the one or two things I'm missing that's causing this to falter. Make sense?
Yeah.
The point being, there's something that can be done in many cases, right? And the question is, how do we go from disempowering state to empowering state so we can fix it going forward, right? Mike, what do you got? You got one?
I had gotten in my, I wasn't good enough to be here. Well, I talked to a couple of people around, like, what the fuck are you talking about? But it was all just this negative mindset.
Yeah.
One of the key issues is that I was in a negative mindset,
Emotional state.
negative emotional state for so many years, working in special victims. Reframing of this whole neuroplasticity, you're in such a negative mindset, you're seeing all this shit every day, and it's registering, and the path is getting stronger and stronger, and it's hard to break out of it. So when I try something new, and I have this negative mindset that I can't seem to break out of, but in the last 4 or 5 weeks, I am working my way out of it. The money was something I couldn't stand. I'm like, oh my God, the money, oh my God, it's ringing again. But it's because I had a pain in the ass.
The money pain in my ass.
Yeah,
So that's that based on fact or assumption?
assumptions.
What's question number 2? Is there any evidence that contradicts that? My house on the waterway. Something that came from the money phone that called in wanting to buy something. So what would you tell a friend? There's all kind of money coming in the money phone. It rained money. You just got to get your skill set down, your mindset right. But here's the thing. What if those 4 negatives are mirroring my energy and they're reacting to my energy? If you start seeing a pattern like that, typically if I'm money phones in my ass and I'm answering with that emotional state, what's that going to do to the person calling? Grant Cardone talks about the greeting. He talks about how the greeting makes the biggest difference. Jerry Miner's big on it too, right? Subconsciously, they're scoring you based on your energy. If you come across needy or triggered, they're going to react subconsciously to your trigger and be the same exact way. Hey, I'm not good enough to be here. Is that an assumption or a fact? Assumption. You've done what since you've been here? Put deals on contracts. Is there any evidence that contradicts that you're not going to be here? Yeah, because you put deals on contract. What would you say to a friend saying the same thing? Do what the hell you're like crazy. Things are going better for you, obviously, but here's the thing, you can't take 20 plus years of negativity and fix it in 6 months, right?
Correct.
That's a problem people want to do. Take for example, I've been walking in the woods on this path for 20 years. Thing is dug in pretty damn good.
Yeah.
That shit's like a canyon, right? And so for me to go back and reprogram that neuroplasticity, I can't reprogram it in 6 or 8 months, 9 months. I gotta start taking that path, but naturally I still want to go down what?
Correct.
The old path.
Right.
That was easy. That one's much easier. It's automatic. I did it for so long. That's all I know. And so,
That's
but
like your condition.
exactly. But it takes a matter of time that I start going down the other one consciously. So now, phase 1 is I can go on the old path. I can go on the new path. New path's harder, but I know it's better. So I start doing that, and eventually it becomes automatically on the good path, not the other path. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Powerful. Just ask yourself the right questions. 4th one: is this thought helping or hurting me? Because I'm trying to reframe this into more powerful self-talk that increases my 5. Have I faced similar situations before? How did I handle them? So, for example, Mike, you've been in a situation before through law enforcement where you felt you weren't good enough. How did you handle it? Did you quit?
Fuck no.
Right?
I
So,
had
push right through.
a great outcome.
Great outcome, right? And so, this is why taking myself through this question process is so powerful, so I can reframe my brain just by getting, all I'm doing here is stripping away all the emotion, getting back to facts and actually what I want, which is true, because so many bad decisions are all based in emotion and not actual fact, which is what screws people up.
What was number 4 again?
Is this thought helping or hurting me? Number 5 is have I faced similar situations, how to handle them. Number 6, what's the worst case scenario and how likely is it to happen? This is something I go through all the time for me. It's a lot of stress. And you get to the point that I go back to selling houses again, and I got a large database of people that know who I am, that want to buy. I start calling every past. I have 7,000 of them. I'm sure I can probably sell some. Be okay. And so that's just something that once I get, I'm not going to be down in the van down by the river. How do I make good decisions from here to make sure I get to where I want to be? I was like, ask myself the question, okay, dude, it's just not that bad. Stressing out, quit being distant from your kids. Quit worrying about, guess what, you're going to be okay. Is there somebody else that's successful right now? Yeah, okay. Whatever I go through that process, worst case scenario, I'm not going to be the river in a van. That's the one thing I got to make sure I'm thinking of. And if it was, I'll go sell some shit, get out of there, buy a new van, and get to a car. That's just how you got to look at it. So, last couple ones here is important. Number 7, Am I catastrophizing or jumping to conclusions? It's a good one. So am I jumping to conclusions? Catastrophizing. What does that mean, you think? Am I just thinking automatic catastrophe, right? Number 8, what's a more balanced or realistic way to view the situation? So for example, go back to Taylor's, right? I'm down, all the deals fall through, real estate's tough, all of a sudden I'm in the rabbit hole, right? Can't make it, all this stuff's happening, right? Ultimately, you're doing a lot of things right, getting stuff under contract, which is the hard part. It is hard to keep together, but that's usually one or two things. It comes down to the pre-frame, and all I'm typically doing or not doing, Jeremy?
Say it again.
What am I typically not, if deals fall apart, what am I typically not doing?
Qualifications.
We're not following the process.
Typically it's a pre-frame or manage expectations, right?
Yeah.
So if my deal falls through at home inspection, typically I didn't manage expectations. Why? Because you can see there's a lot of shit wrong with the house when you look at the house. Now if it's something that no one knew of, or that was very rare, like maybe mold in the crawl space or something like that, typically that's very rare. Most of the time I didn't manage expectations. They weren't expecting a large issue to come up or whatever it may be, right? And it's just 1 out of 10, no big deal. But if I'm all of a sudden 4 out of 10, that's a me problem. And it's okay, but here's what most people do. They're a victim, they don't ever go look inside and don't fix a problem, so they continue to self-prophesize that, and they continue to have that problem for the rest of their career until they quit. Or I go down this route, fix it, and say, maybe I just need to do something a little bit different. Where I fall apart at, what can I say differently, and I'll analyze the situation, then boom, now of course going forward, and that's how you grow faster. Make sense? This is a game of business. Did I lose you guys with that one or no?
No, sometimes you can take and make your little chart, like positives and negatives, and just go down each
Yep.
side and say, okay.
Last 2 here. How my best self or role model think about this? What will Gary say about it? What would he do, right? He's my mentor for 10 years, 11 years. What would he do? It helps me figure out a different way to look at things. Last one here. Will this matter in a week, a month, or a year? In many cases, so every time I log into my stack, it gives me a memory. And most of the time, there's something bad. What do you think happens? I don't even fucking remember what it is. There's names in there of people that I don't even know who they are. Can't remember who it is. They weren't my client, they were one of the agent's clients, but still, it's one of those things that, man, that thing had me so triggered that day, or angry that day that I wrote about it for 45 minutes. Obviously to release that and move fast past it, but most of the time we just want to focus on how do I focus on myself and get better. Because I can control that outcome, I can't control the other one. Does that make sense to you guys? And so the next thing I want to do, last one here, at this point, after this, what I got to do, I'm using this to do what? To reframe. All this is reframing the game. How do I reframe the game so that I can play it in a way that allows me to win? So negative self-talk is always mess things up. Reframes, I make mistakes like everyone else, but I learn and grow from them. Make sense? It's more empowering that way. I'm not good enough to do this. There you go. I may not know everything yet, but I'm capable of learning and improving. That's a much more empowering self-talk, gets me where I want to be. This is too hard, I can't do it. Reframed is, this is challenging, but I can do it and make it one step at a time and figure it out. Negative self-talk, people think I'm a failure. What others think often doesn't define me. I'm focused on my own growth and success. You guys see the point of what it is. And so how do I do that overall? And here's the great thing. Once you get good at this, you realize that you can't get good without going through this. Can you grow without difficulty? Can you grow without struggle? No. So when you guys get to struggle and difficulty, know this is normal, this happens, but you got to embrace it so you can get better quickly. Myself included, especially in a difficult marketplace where it makes a big difference. And so focus on neutralizing extremes. Don't use words like always, never, impossible, things like that. Use growth language like I'm learning, I'm improving, I'm figuring it out. That's one thing I can always say, I'll figure this shit out. I don't care what market is like, I don't care what's going on, I'm going to figure it out. The other thing you want to do is surround yourself with positivity. You create an environment that supports better self-talk. How do I do that? Well, the YouTube stuff, the video in the morning just programs my brain. I'm listening to things like David Goggins, Andy Frisella, whoever it is programming in the morning, so I start my day off with what? Positive self-talk. I do it every day. Why? Because I know the world is negative, and it hurts me in that part, which is important. So, questions about that?